Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Trip Sitting Podcast with Chad McLean. Chad is the founder of Mental Joe Apparel, which is an apparel brand that advocates for mental health. And we go pretty deep into Chad's journey with mental health. Chad is a veteran who was on SSRIs for the past 20 years of his life. And then he actually found ketamine about 3 years ago. And his first ketamine infusion from there saw a pretty radical transformation in his mental health, and now has continued to advocate for the use of psychedelics to help other people as well. More than that, Chad's just a really raw person. He's super real. He's super genuine, and he's just got so much to share with the world. I learned so much from this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to being able to share it with everybody else as well. So I hope you enjoy. But first, I just want to give a quick plug to my new newsletter called Trippy Mondays. Trippy Mondays is a weekly newsletter that'll be sent out on Mondays, going over 3 things from the past week that I learned from or that caught my attention, or just any random thoughts that I had. So it's just another way for you to be able to follow along on my journey, and I hope you guys are able to enjoy that. Now, here's the episode. What we were talking about it right when we got started was basically the idea of owning your shit, and how we don't see enough people actively owning their shit. Like, we all want to maintain these appearances of having our shit together like all the time. And for me, like, this was something that I've been just like struggling a lot with lately, is now that I've kind of started getting going and like I launched this other business, you know, I want to appear successful, appear like I know what I'm doing. And it had just been creating so much like mental tension in my mind, to where like it was hard for me to admit to myself that like I'm tired, I don't know what I'm doing, and like I'm exhausted. Yeah. And sometimes we just go through those weeks. Yeah. So like, I mean, you mentioned that like last week was a tough week for you.
Yeah, and you know, prior to probably my mental health journey and getting on top of a lot of this shit, I would have beat myself up for months, right? As opposed to just a couple bad days last week, right? And I would have been, oh, my life sucks, you know, I'm worthless, yada, yada, yada. But now, I'm on the other side of this, and I kind of look at it, I kind of explain it as like 2 sides of the mountain, if you will. One side is your negative self-talk. The other side is your positive self-talk, right? And so I feel like I've kind of crested and I'm on the other side now. I'm on that positive self-talk, but every once in a while you'll hear that real negative voice, but it's in the canyon of the negative side, right? So it's real echoey. It's still there. You hear it, but now that you've kind of have all these different tools and other things that are in place, like now I can step out of that. Like, no, dude, you do have a good life. You are good. You know, you're a good dude. You're positive. Like, make shit happen. Like, this is a couple bad days. It's going to happen. Let's take those days to reset, relax, and try to get those bad thoughts or feelings out, and then let's push forward. So it was a couple of days, like I said, last week, and I think that's the thing, is like there needs to be more guys like us that speak to this and say, hey, dude, like, you're gonna stumble, you're gonna fall, like, it's gonna happen, but how quickly? Everyone says, well, you got to get back up, and I agree with that, but how quickly are you getting back up? Is it a couple hours, is it a couple days, or is it weeks, or is it months? To where, again, back in that day when I was, fucking with myself in the brain, it was months, it was weeks, dude, that I was just down in the gutter, and then I'd crest again, and I'd almost be manic, right? So, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to eat right, I'm doing all this, and then you right back down there. So, I mean, I get it, and I think that's why, again, like, guys like us need to connect more, because I don't know a human being that's not going through some bullshit in their life.
Yeah. Is it your personal experience? Because hearing you kind of talk about that, and like, thinking about, well, how long does it take for you to kind of get back up and get back to that normal state? I think I find myself, and this is just how I grew up, is like, I'm trying to get back to the normal state. Like, I'm really good at being aware when I'm not at that kind of baseline that I want to be at. So like, I'm really good at knowing, okay, I'm really happy right now, or like, I'm kind of down right now. I think it's just when I'm down, subconsciously, I'm putting that pressure on myself to be like, okay, that you're down. Now, what are you going to do to get back up? And it's that talk right there of me basically saying that I need to get back to that baseline. That just makes me go even deeper, like into the canyon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's nail on the head, right? I mean, you hit that perfectly. I mean, it's. I think that first thing is being aware, right? Are you aware of your bad moods? Are you aware of the bad energy that you're carrying, right? And before, I never understood when people say, live in the present. Live in the present. What the fuck are you talking about? My mind would go so hard. Like, I'm thinking about shit 10 years down the road that doesn't even matter, that is upsetting me today. It might not even happen, right? We all, and most likely it's not going to happen, but we stress about that shit, and everybody does it. So, you know, I kind of explained something like the first time I truly broke down and cried was probably 2 months ago. And I literally could feel the tears for the first time, like on my skin, and how heavy they were and how they came down my face. And before, I never experienced that, because for the last 20 years, I was on some kind of SSRI or antidepressant, and I never felt, right? I was just walking through life numb. But again, now that I'm on that other side and I see what living looks like now I'm kind of spinning all wheels as quickly as I can, because now I've got a shorter ramp in front of me as I do behind me, right? You know, I'm almost upset that I've wasted all these years, you know, in this gray area, if you will, right? Because it's like, fuck, if I would have known about plant medicines and all that jazz maybe 10 years ago, I'd be in a better spot right now today. But that's not where my journey was leading me, right? So you just kind of roll with what's handed to you as far as your deck of cards.
Yeah, that goes back to, I mean, essentially like living in the present. Like the second that you have that self-talk of being like, well, fuck, I wish I would have known this 10 years ago. Now you're just making yourself upset all over again.
Exactly. And one thing I always never understood is when you see all these successful people, right? They're doing all kinds of shit. Like they got their hand, like use The Rock, for example, right? Like this dude's in movies. This dude's owning a football team. He's got a tequila. He's got an energy brand. He's got a workout. Like this dude's got his hands in everything. And I think what people don't realize with that is he started off small too, and he started gaining momentum, but he put in the hard work. He put in, you know, the long hours and stuff. And I never understood that. Of like, how the fuck are all these people doing this? Well, more than likely, like they've got a mental health coach, right? And they're coaching them on their bad days and how to push through and how to be stronger there. Because I can feel that momentum now. You know, again, I'm no rock by any means, but you see what I'm saying? I kind of feel that, you know?
Yeah. Once you get to that mindset of baby steps, like that's where like you really need to just have your mind at, is like, you know, we're taught these stories of like, you know, the tiny little startup that goes on and then sells for $2 billion in 2 years and shit. At least like that was my experience. That was always what I like aspired to be, is like that startup that just has that idea and gets 1 million users in, you know, 2 days and then hits it big and makes a bunch of money. Whereas like when you actually look at the stories of, you know, these entrepreneurs and these people that society deems as successful, by the way. And that's also a term that is like, it's so different.
Really mean?
Yep, exactly. But like, you know, you see these people that you deem as quote unquote overnight successes, but really they've been putting in, you know, all of this work for the last 5 to 10 years that you've never heard about. And they just basically reached that pinnacle. And then that's what kind of launches them to stardom. And people think that it starts at that pinnacle and that from there, then they go up, when really it's all of this work that happened in the background that got them to that pinnacle in order to be able to then see that success.
Well, and I think too, it comes down to prioritization of shit, right? And what I was going to say kind of with that rock thing is he prioritizes things differently than your average Joe. Most successful people do. And what I mean by that is you being in Chicago, I still am, but not to the degree I was. Huge Chicago Bears fan. Huge. I can tell you.
I'm sorry.
What college they came out of. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, you know, I knew the colleges that came out. I knew the stats. You know, I was traveling to go, and I live in Arizona, so I'm traveling to go watch the Bears play at least once, if not twice a year. I mean, I was that type of a fan. But once I had boys and once I started this healing journey with my mental health, I was like, why? Like the Bears have never written me a check to go cheer for them. Like, why am I spending all this money and using all this time to go watch something that doesn't, at the end of the day, it has zero meaning in my life? So for me, I had to reprioritize that. Sure, do I still watch football games? Do I still kind of from time to time check in and see what's going on? 100%. I'm still a fan, but I don't sit there for 6 hours to watch a game. I'm not at the bar having wings and a beer when really I'm at home with my boys, and if the game's on, the game's on. So I think it all comes down to trying to reprioritize and what's really important in life.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like figuring out for yourself what's important. A lot of people don't get that awareness until much, much later in life. Is that you're told by your parents, you're told by your teachers, you're told by your friends what you should think is important, because you want to be accepted by all of these people, and like you want to be seen a certain way by these people. So like you take on these false identities of things that now matter to you, but in reality, like you just don't actually give a shit. But now you have this whole false identity that now you're trying to cling on to and like preserve, because again, you want to be liked and you want to be loved.
Yeah, it's so true, because I mean, when I came out of the military, I was pissed off, man. I was mad, I was angry, and I went back home. And I'm from Billings, Montana. I mean, at that time, it was a town of probably 80,000, maybe 90,000 people max, right? You're in Montana. There's not a whole lot to do up there besides, farming and, you're bar fighting and drinking beer every weekend, So you knock a couple big dudes out a couple times, and guess what? Now you hold the title for the town, And that's what I was a big bar fighter back in the day, and I don't know why, but goddamn, it felt good. Like it was
get that dopamine rush.
Yeah, it was a way for me to release, the anger and the toxicity that I had. I mean, was it healthy? No, it wasn't healthy. But like you said, to your point, like I had this conception of who I should be and who I need to be, and being that tough guy was part of it. No. If I really go back to like my high school days, I was this fun, loving, kind of dorky kid. Like, I dressed up for Spirit Week, right? I was the kid that dressed up that looked like Forrest Gump running down hallways and stuff and being goofy, and kids would laugh at it. And they would look forward to, what next day is Chad going to wear, because he's going to do it to the tens, So I feel like I'm getting back to that foundational of like the fun, goofy, like let's just talk about bullshit because we're all going through it kind of a guy, as opposed to trying to walk around and be the tough guy all the time. Like, not getting me fucking anywhere in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like that idea of like thinking about who you were as a kid is like the idea of like inner child work, which is a term that I've heard, in therapy. And I by no means have studied psychology and know what what the actual definition of that is, but basically just the idea behind it of letting that inner child, the idea of just playing for the sake of playing, like just because it's fun, and just like being goofy and like letting this side out of you that we've now built these walls around because somebody at some point told us something that like hurt us about that. They're like, hey, like like you're being an idiot, or like, especially for guys, this is something that's really common, is like, hey, that's really gay. And like that's something that like you're then one told is a bad thing. And then you're like, well, now I don't want to be perceived that way because I've been told that this is bad and I don't want to be perceived that. So therefore I'm going to stop doing this. And, meanwhile, like, your inner authentic self is then in there being, essentially ashamed of being who you actually are.
Well, and you're not letting yourself be present or be yourself. And being a dad for me was the biggest eye-opening thing for me to really make changes, right? It's crazy. I'm OCPD diagnosed, right? So, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So not like washing the hands, but like everything's got to be in line. Everything's got to be dress. Everything's, you know what I mean? And so, a Jordan Peterson, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He's got this great kind of like reel on social media that talks about, you have kids and they're for one freaking time. That's it. They live this tiny version of themselves for a very short window. And as parents, we have a shorter window to allow them to play, to be kids, be what they do, but also drawing lines so they're not rude and obnoxious and, all that jazz. And so with my boys, like, I don't push them into sports or anything like that. I want them to find their way. My oldest loves to dance and be goofy. So I'm like, hey, man, you like this? I'll sign you up for dance class. Like, that's what he's into. So I'm not going to try to push him down one side or the other. My littlest guy, man, this kid's got body awareness like no other. He'd be one hell of a wrestler or a boxer or in jiu-jitsu. But you know what? He's not interested right now. So I'm not going to push him down that road. So when he's interested, when he's ready to rock and roll, and whatever you want to do, I support you 100%. And I think that needs to be the lesson as parents, right? All these little human beings have their own journey. They have their own way of how they're going to grow up. Like, we can only be there to support them and guide them to the best of our abilities. I just see so many parents, and I'm sure you see it too, that are just trying to shove, maybe their high school dreams down their kid's throat because they think that's the way to go. And it's like, sorry, your kid's not athletic. He's got 2 left feet. Let him be a kid. Fuck, man. Yeah.
Putting all this pressure onto them, which then again, like, causes them to internalize pressure. And like, I see that in myself. Like, the reason why I try to be this kind of perfect being was because, a lot of that was influenced from my parents, and not because I don't think any parent ever does this, like, knowing that it's causing like inner turmoil inside of their child. I think that they're doing it because based on their experiences, like, maybe they wish that they would have been pushed in a different direction because that's what they wanted to do, not then realizing that, oh, this is a completely separate human being from me. They might not want to do the things that I want to do, but they just don't quite understand that because they haven't gotten to that point of conscious awareness yet.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing it, right? We're both in this space. We're seeing where it's that we talk about it, in the plant medicine space and just the new mental health space, right? Is that ripple effect, right? Like, it's happening. You're seeing people that are starting to talk about this. I've had people reach out to me that in a million years did I not ever think that they would want to ever go set for a ceremony or want any information on this. And now they're some of my biggest advocates for what we're doing with Mental Joe, right? So
yeah.
I just think it's a generational thing. Like, you look at World War II, you got the Depression. People just put their head down. They drank their way through life, and they created families, and you have that term generational trauma, right? And that just kind of carries down the line. And then you have, like, my mom's generation, where they did the best they could with the tools that they had, right? But they also didn't have full-on conversations about, mental health and what's bugging them. And I think you're starting to see it with my generation and your generation as well. It's like, how is this flowing down the stream so we can be a little bit more aware of daily life? And, at the end of the day, a lot of shit, a lot of people going through some crap. Like, let's just be a little bit more empathetic about it. The reason I say that, because I used to have zero empathy for people. Zero. Like, pull up your bootstraps and get shit done was kind of my motto. But then you bring it back to understanding, the mind, body, and gut connection. It's like all these things got to be aligned so you can really trudge along on your optimal level as a human being. So
yeah, when you first had your boys, was this mindset already starting to shift, or was it only until afterwards that you realized a lot of these things that you had to deal with on your own?
Probably when both boys were in the picture. So my boys are 15 months apart. Connor is 5.5 and Colin's 4.5. Probably somewhere in the middle. If you want to get super granular with it, again, I'll look at it this way. This coming up May will be 3 years from the day where I almost took my life. And with that being said, I had 2 boys sleeping. My wife staring at me when I was ready to take my life. So I had a family. It was established. When I did my inpatient, or I like to call it, one who flew over the cuckoo nest, I went to the cuckoo bin for almost 2 weeks. And, being detached from society and being detached from technology and stuff, kind of had to set your shit, right? So through that process, I learned, okay, what is going on? Like, I knew something in my brain wasn't connecting. I knew there was something off. I could never put a pinpoint on it. And when I was talking to my wife on one of my calls, I said, hey, we've got to think outside the box on here. Otherwise, I'm either going to end up in here or I'm going to end up actually killing myself, because my mind, I couldn't take it. My brain just hurt. It was just go, 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 go. And I figured the only way to shut it off was to eat around, you know? So in long-winded answer, no, like I am very early on in this journey still as far as mental health. And if it wasn't for ketamine and my wife looking into this stuff, right, I don't think I'd be here, because I wasn't open to plant medicines. You know, I was a dare kid in freaking high school, man. I went to the elementary schools, and drugs are a bad thing. But that's also been predicated on, how our government and everybody else has put labels on this stuff. So again, long answer on that one, but no, it was, like I said, I'm 3 years into this journey right now. And I think that's why it's so fresh. I'm a novice. Like I said, I went through 5 different ketamine clinics, basically as a guinea pig, because I wanted to see what worked and what didn't work and who uses integration and who doesn't use integration. And so as we get referrals and people reach out to us, then I can say, hey, like, this ketamine clinic does this by the book and the way it should be done, so a lot of different stuff going on there, really.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So like ketamine is one of those things that I guess technically I have done ketamine once, but I wouldn't consider it in an intentional setting. It was
therapeutic dose.
No, it was snorting ketamine up my nose at a concert. So I don't think I consider that to be
exactly.
That didn't quite give me the effects that I was, the healing power that I was looking for.
Yeah, and I think right, these medicines can be used in both forms, but responsibly.
Yeah.
Right. I think you've heard it. Anybody in this arena, right, will tell you it's setting, and integration. Right. Let's do this the right way.
Yeah.
So are these drugs going to get abused? Yep. Are you going to have knuckleheads out there that are charlatans? Yep. But we can't manage this entire society as you see now to, I'm going to say, that lower 10 to 15%. Like, you talk to most people in the country, everyone's pretty middle of the road. You could probably argue for or against both sides of one topic or whatnot, right? So same thing, like if we can get more people to understand like these plant medicines are actually healing people, one, you're a guy, Caesar's a guy, you see all these veterans out here that are screaming to high hell. Like, why are we not talking about things in more of a manner of a healing as opposed to, I took some shrooms and went to a rave. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're talking about the therapeutic uses of these drugs,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, my use of psychedelic medicines has shifted quite a bit to even now when, if I am going to take them recreationally, which I still do sometimes, it's like, there's still so much intent behind it. It's just so much different. Like, it used to be like, hey, like, you want to take acid tomorrow? I'd be like, sure thing. Whereas now it's, it's more of like okay, I've got, this is what we're going to do. Like, this is the intention. Like, I want to feel this. If this happens, like, give us some space to like heal our shit. And like, that can also be fun. Like, I don't know if you've had this experience, but through healing your own traumas, have you, I guess, had, fun during that time, or has it always been like super serious and, super deep?
No, I've had a ton of fun. I mean, my wife's got videos of me. And again, when I went after this, I had no, like, I didn't know shit. We found a ketamine clinic, we scheduled, and we went in, and I didn't do a ton of research.
When was this the first time that you went?
Oh, man. So, what did I say? 3 years this May. So we're in 2021 or 2020, right? May of 2020. Yeah, May of 2020. Was in the psych ward in May, and I think my first ketamine session was in June.
Damn.
Literally, I was done screwing around. Like, I needed to get healed, and and I'm not talking smack on it, but I think there's a place for it. But there's so many people that fall through the mental health cracks, and I'm definitely one of those guys, right? Here's your SSRIs. Go talk to a therapist. You're going to be golden. And I think you're seeing a shift in that, right? You're seeing a lot of therapists and even psychologists that are kind of saying, hey, like, there is a time for talk therapy, But if we can use these psychedelic medicines with talk therapy, you're hitting a grand slam, right?
Yeah.
And I think if more people realize that, like, put them together. Let's work them in a therapeutic setting so people can heal from this stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, to go back to your question, you know, for me and the wife, she was filming me, and I didn't realize this, but there was a portion where I was rocking, and it was like my probably second or third ketamine infusion, and I'm holding this baby and I'm patting it on the back as I'm rocking it. No idea why I was doing what I didn't get it, right? Well, I have an integration coach now, or a guide, or whatever you want to put the label on. And he's like, dude, that's powerful. That's literally you holding yourself as a baby saying, it's okay. It's okay. You're forgiving yourself as a child. And for me, like, it was mind blowing because I didn't put that together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of stuff that I was going along on this ketamine journey. I would journal stuff. I would try to figure it out. And as you know, once you go through a psychedelic experience, like, your neurotransmitters are essentially wide open for like 90 days. So that's where they're really pushing the integration part to start different routines in your life, really.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that it wasn't, I guess, like 2 months ago was when you really started, like, broke down and cried. Did that not ever happen during, I guess, when you were doing these ketamine infusions for the last 2 years? Like, were those emotions just not really coming up?
Yeah, they just weren't coming up. I might have cried one or two times, you know, after a ketamine session, just maybe realizing some shit.
Yeah.
But up until, like you said, 2.5 months, maybe 3 months ago, I didn't fully feel like what it felt like to cry. If that makes sense. I know it's hard to explain, but like in that moment, like I could almost pause myself and be like, holy shit, man. Like, this is what it feels like to release this. You know, and after I cried and after I got it out, like, it felt like I had 1,000-ton bricks off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And again, being in this male world, right? We hear all this shit of, you know, don't cry or you're a pussy or don't cry or whatever. Like, no, I think you're starting to see more men speak up that are, you know, I'm going to say alpha males, right? That are saying, no, man, it's cool to cry. Like, you got to get rid of this stuff. Otherwise, what happens? Your body holds on to it. Your body stores that trauma. So crying is one way to release that. So,
yeah, it gets stored as energy within the body. And like, me personally, like I release it in two ways, either by crying or by laughing. Like, there's been times where I've just been like absolutely hysterically laughing and cannot stop. And like, that's also your body's way of releasing this energy. And like, even laughing about like fucked up shit sometimes, like things that would make you normally really uncomfortable, and you just can't stop laughing at it. And it's, you know, this release of energy within the body.
No, I think any release that you can get that, I think that's why you see people doing so many different things in their integration that works. For me, mine was getting back into the gym. I mean, again, to put, you know, proof in the pudding is, you know, I'm down 60 pounds or down 40 pounds right now. And my goal is to get down to 200 right now. I'm sitting at about just under 2.25, you know? So, I mean, that in my diet's changed. I don't eat the sugar I used to. I don't drink like I used to. Now, same thing. Like, I might have a drink here and there. It's set and setting, right? If I'm at a barbecue, I'll have a beer or two. But other than that, I don't crave it. I don't want it. I don't care. If I'm at a birthday party, that better be the best goddamn cake at that birthday party. Otherwise, I'm not touching it. Prior to that, like, I don't care. I was just going to eat the cake, whether it was shitty or not, because that was my drug. Sugar was a drug for me, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different things that I've changed currently with just in my current lifestyle, and it's just made me a better human being all the way around.
Yeah. When do you start Mental Joe?
So kind of, this will be a little long-winded. So when I first got into the holistic approach of just mental health, my wife found a practice called TRE, which is tension trauma release exercises. Mainly, we carry a lot of our tension and trauma within our psoas muscle, right? Dr. David Berceli came up with this protocol, essentially, of how to get the body to go ahead and tremor to release that energy. Well, I ended up loving it, and TRE was a great tool for me that I became a practitioner. So I went through the whole training regimen and learned about the body and the sympathetic nervous system and, the frontal cortex and, how all this stuff's connected. With that, that's when we launched Mental Joe. Mental Joe was essentially launched for TRE. Well, imagine trying to explain TRE to a bunch of people that aren't mind, body, spirit connected, right? Like I would have. What the fuck we're laying on the ground and shaking, and that's going to help me? Yeah, I'm good, dude. I'm out.
Yeah, seems kind of weird.
Yeah, exactly. So through one of my ketamine infusions, it was crazy. It was one of the two things that I can really say to the date, like, okay, that was it. That's when it launched, and it was clear as day, like launch an apparel company. Right, that talks about mental health and talks about mental health of non-traditional means. And from there, we're like, screw it. We'll just rebrand. It was still Mental Joe, right? GI Joe speaks to our veterans, your average Joe. It speaks to the average Joe, average American, average human being. Like, that might not be that billionaire. That is that 8 to 5 job, right? So then we rebranded, and then boom, I just started getting into apparel. I just started manufacturing that, or research and manufacturers here in the U.S. because all of our apparel minus our hats is USA made. So I started doing that grind, and then starting to go to conferences and learn about fabrics and things of that nature. So probably just this last year was the true launch of Mental Joe Apparel, and it was in April. So wow. If you think about when where we've come in these 2.5 years. Mental Joe is not even really a year old in the apparel space. We've already had some really big things where in this next year we should look completely different as a company. I mean, we want to go and take this to a point where we have athleisure wear that speaks to mental health, right? Because tell me one clothing brand out there that specifically launched to talk about a situation or something that's going on in society. I don't know of anything. You've got Nike and Reebok and Lululemon and all these, right? They're all for profit, which is great. And they donate back to certain foundations. But we're launched very specifically to talk about mental health and to bring mental health in the forefront on a daily basis. Because let's face it, September, I think, is Suicide Awareness Month. And then you have May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Like, why do we have to have months? Like, we need to talk about this shit daily, not just a certain time of the year.
Yes, 100%. Like giving yourself the space to be able to do that and like not make it a weird thing. And like, when you grow up in places where it's not talked about, it's very difficult to find places where it is okay to talk about with like, unless you are actively looking, and most people are not going to be actively looking for that. So like, I mean, I'm sure probably when you're out wearing your clothes or, I'm not sure if you do, like trade shows or anything like that, but like, people come up and talk to you and like you have those conversations and like now you're actually creating other people that are even evangelists for you that will then go out and be more comfortable having these conversations just because you were. And like, kind of how you talked about that ripple effect.
Yeah, I mean, again, nail on head, dude. That was perfectly said. I mean, that is why this is created. I mean, I'll wear it. So this is our Bigfoot holding the mushroom. We call it Happy Squatch, right? Mm-hmm. Literally wore this to a kid's birthday party. Probably not appropriate. But if you're not in the mushroom space, you just think it's a Sasquatch walking, right?
Yeah,
like you're not
100%
paying attention to the other stuff. I had 5 different parents walk up to me and go, dude, I love your shirt. I do microdosing. Or, dude, I love your shirt. I just had a ceremony a month ago. So, I mean, it's there, but no one wants to talk about it. So now I have 5 different people that I can now definitely connect on a different level when I see them out and about. And that happens every time. And we've got just regular shirts like the ego shirt that you're wearing, right? People understand in this space, like once you go through a psychedelic trip, like you really kind of lose ego. You really want to help other people. You really want things to be, as utopian as possible, right? To the best degree as we can. And so that's what we're trying to do with the apparel is like, let's start a conversation. Now you're seeing some dude that, is just, again, I say an average Joe. I'm a pretty freaking average guy, man. having a conversation about his mental health. The next thing you know, these people are telling me about their mental health. Before you know it, they're like, well, hey, do you know anybody that does ceremonies? Or, hey, can you recommend a ketamine, place? And before you know it, boom, yeah, we've got partners in line to refer out. So these people can go do that stuff. I want to know, that's the other side of the ballpark. I don't want to touch it, but, I also don't want to leave people hanging high and dry if they're trying to, get some mental help and become a better human being.
Yeah. It's crazy how that happens too, of once you start going through your own healing journey, how you just naturally want others around you to feel this way too, like to go through it and let them know. Yeah. Like, it's not like anyone ever tells you, the ketamine clinic isn't like, hey, go start telling other people about this ketamine clinic so they can do this. Like, you just naturally, if you get that healing, you feel so different and you want others to change as well. And like, I say change in kind of a, that's probably not the right word, but like, you should never hope somebody changes for any reason. Yeah. That's again, like your own selfish needs, but simply just wanting to be there for somebody to support them if they decide to do this is really all it's about.
Yeah. And same thing. It's like, I feel like we're there as just kind of an informational, kind of cool design t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a resource.
Conduit to kind of get people, as on the side, like on our website, I've got a whole resource page that's dedicated towards, other veteran foundations and other foundations that do psychedelic medicines. I've got podcasts on there. I've got articles. So when you're shopping for a shirt and you're like curious about something, okay, maybe I'm going to go over here and check out this podcast or this article he's got posted. So a little different than most probably apparel. And as we grow, obviously things will change. We'll mold differently and things, but we're so small right now that it's easy to kind of like put some information out there along with our apparel and not be so garbled up by everything.
Yeah. Have you yourself used any other psychedelic medicines besides ketamine?
So ketamine, and I did do a psilocybin ceremony, which is, for those listening, is magic mushrooms. If you're not real sure, but giving the podcast name a trip setting, I'm sure everyone kind of knows what the hell we're talking about. And in that, so same thing. That was I would probably say that was my other kind of aha moment that really kind of hit me in the face. I want to say it's maybe 4 months, but I've been completely off of all SSRIs and everything since that psilocybin ceremony, that journey.
Wow.
That was really the only thing. And I was still on SSRIs at the time. I was on 37.5 milligrams of Effexor. And so my guide, as we went through this stuff, I ended up taking almost 7 grams. So
that's a dose.
That was not a light dose. And honestly, it was like if I was looking at a clear blank sky almost the entire time. It was just like this huge movie screen, and I was almost like grabbing at stuff, like trying to pull in stuff from my mom or my sister or my wife or my boys, right? I'm trying to pull shit in because I want to fix it. I want to clean it up. But man, like the entire trip, if you want to call it that, I was just chilling. No weird colors, no weird distort, like nothing. The only thing that came up during this was a huge white pill bottle that kept getting dumped like this over and over and over for like 5 minutes. And for me, it was like, we're done. That's it. Don't need the Effexor. It's telling me I've got a good foundation. We don't need to take this shit anymore. And the next day, threw all my Effexor, and I haven't been on any of that stuff. And my weight has slowly just kept declining because now I'm off that stuff. So I feel like my body's getting back to a base of who I am too, because I was holding all that, extra weight from the pharmaceutical stuff.
Damn, man. I'm getting goosebumps, like listening to that.
So, when everyone has a different trip or a different journey or a different ceremony, right? And some are really, orgasmic and colors and it's crazy, da da da. Man, it just wasn't for me. And maybe there's a time it will be, right? But for me, it was clear as day. Get rid of the pills. You're good, man. You don't need that shit anymore. And like I said, I want to say, as of maybe yesterday, I've been 4 months with no SSRIs at all. And I feel better and clear than I ever have. And yes, I've stumbled. I've had a couple days that have been shit, but I'll take those 4 days of shit over, being cooped up on some pills and just running through life numb. So
yeah, it's like what comes to my mind when you talked about the fact how like when you first sat down with it and you were just kind of like grabbing at stuff, like you're like, okay, like I want to fix this, I want to fix this, I want to fix this. I think that's something I get caught up in just my journey in general, is like knowing that there are all of these things that I want to work on, and I'm trying to work on all of them at one time, and not knowing like what is it that's actually in my mind right now that I'm having trouble with, and like parsing between that. And then I start thinking again. And once I start thinking, that's game over. Like I've already lost. The whole point is not to think. The whole point is just to be, and just let what is.
Yeah. Yep. Love it. And I've always been like that. I've always been a guy that just kind of force fed everything, you know, go, 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 go. You know, I was corporate America for 20 plus years. It was, how hard can I hit the ladder? How quick can I get shit done? How quick can I go up? How much money can I make? To where now I'm like, I've learned, you know, and I'll use this kind of terminology, but I've learned to take that foot off the gas a little bit. And I've noticed when I'm full tilt and Mental Joe's going and I'm connecting and getting shit done and go, 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 there's nothing really flowing in. But as soon as I kind of pause and kind of let that foot off the gas a little bit, it's interesting. Like, people that haven't emailed me in 3 weeks, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? Why didn't they email me back? I'll suddenly get an email from them, or I'll suddenly get a phone call, or a manufacturer will reach out and be like, dude, we really like your product and your mission. We would like to talk about collaborating. Yeah. So it's really weird. It's a funny thing, right? Because you want things to go because you know you only have so many days, but at the same time, when you're trying to hammer that, you know, round peg into a square hole, like sometimes you got to stop and reassess shit. So it's not so hard on you mentally, and just understanding you're putting in the work. Those things are going to flow to you. And same thing like on your trips, like just go into it. And I think that's what's helped me is I've gone into a lot of this shit with no expectations, no knowledge, no preconceived notions. Like that was my very first time doing mushrooms, and went in with zero expectations. It's just, okay, well, people say these can be pretty gnarly. Here we go. Buckle up. Let's see what happens. And you can handle that shit like
you're like, yeah, all I saw was a pill bottle just getting dumped out, man. That was pretty easy.
Yeah, I was like, shit, not a big deal. All right. But it ain't the same thing, right? I've been on SSRIs for 20 goddamn years. So I still have that shit in the system. So I think it's the same thing. It's going to take a while for that stuff to kind of get out of the system and get back to a little bit more organic state, if you want to call it that, of who Chad McLean is. So,
did you,
same thing I would tell you.
Did you start SSRIs right when you got out of the military?
Pretty much, man. Yeah. Sorry, I took a quick drink there. Yeah, I would probably say it was probably within the first year of me getting out. And this can be said for any veteran. I think any veteran would agree is like, there's no real, what I call deprogramming when you come out, right? It's literally, there's a program out there called TAPS right now. And same thing I'm hearing from veterans. It's just kind of a hokey program. It's how the government just kind of checks their box and say, we did this this outboarding, if you want to call it that. But if you think about it, right, you go into the military and they tear you down, right? And they essentially reprogram you, right? The old term was brainwashing, right? Because they need you to act, walk, talk, and, when an order is thrown at you, to move, right? Because seconds are lives, right? Especially in the infantry. And so when you come out, like, same thing. There's no deprogramming. It is, oh, you're done. You got your DD-214. See ya. So now you get back into the society and you hear people that are, bitching and moaning about the smallest things. You're like, man, I was in the field for 2 weeks. All I wanted was a hot shower and a Snickers bar. You know what I mean? So there was no way of doing that. I was depressed. I missed it. I was in a recruiter's office probably once a year for the first 7 years, debating about going back in. But yeah, veterans are automatically doing, like I said, they're either drinking or they're getting on SSRIs or painkillers or whatever the VA is going to give them, because it's just hard. It's literally hard just to kind of come out and cope and be a civilian again. You're not the same human being you were when you went in.
Yeah. Hearing you say that, like, you debated going back in, like it's brings it to kind of a broader thing, how like when you consciously know that something is bad for you, yet you can't stop yourself from still wanting to do that thing. Like the same reason behind why people stay in toxic relationships or why people stay at jobs that they hate is because when you're used to dysfunction, if that's all you've known and, you know, you haven't died yet, you know, essentially dysfunction is now considered safe for your central nervous system and for your mind. And so anything outside of that definition, you are uncomfortable in true safety, you know, knowing what your conscious mind wants, because like your body's just been programmed a different way.
Yeah. You know, and that was one of the things for me that I kind of learned is in, you know, reflecting back is like all the relationships I was in, like there were toxic relationships. Like there was something like that girl didn't have or that I didn't have, and we both couldn't fulfill those needs, right? But we stayed in it because that's all we know. You know, and I almost screwed up my relationship with my wife, you know, because like my wife is very even keel, man. Like there's not a whole lot that rocks her boat. She is kind of at that place of like, you don't like me, kick rocks, fuck off. You know, like she's been there for a long time. She's really good with that. And so for me, right, I almost screwed up our relationship because for me in my crazy little mind, like it wasn't toxic enough. Like there wasn't enough drama to keep it interesting. You know, and we joke about it. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of boring. Like I needed some kind of craziness to keep me rolling. So yeah, I hear it. But you know, like we've been saying, like the first step is recognizing that and understanding those patterns, and then like going, okay, there's a common denominator here, and I'm part of that common denominator, and I've got to fix myself and my approach and my thought processes. But where does that stem from? Childhood traumas, military traumas, and you know, and then we never, like I said, you never fix it, because what do? We're just humans. We put our head down, we drink our Red Bull, we go to work, and boom, we repeat it the same way again until you finally get sick of it, until you get tired of that bullshit job, you know?
Yeah. It's hearing you say like that, you know, we're obviously only human. I wrote earlier today in like a blog post that I haven't actually posted, but when I was in therapy today, I was like, I came to this radical realization that I'm just a human being. And, you know, jokingly, obviously I'm just a fucking human being. And like, this is something that I have, you know, realized over and over and over and over again. Yet I still then subconsciously get back into this mode where I try to hold myself to the standard of perfection and where like I'm not a human being. And so like even once you recognize these things and recognize these patterns and even work through it one time, something else is going to happen, and that's going to put you right back into that subconscious programming, and like you're not even going to realize it. So like you have to catch all of these different times that the same thing is going to happen.
Yeah, and it's betting you're not a country music fan or
that would be correct.
Country music, but yeah, but I'm gonna hit you up in chat and do me a favor and go listen to this song. It's by Cody Johnson. It's called Human. Okay, and if you just listen to the words, it is so on point, right? In some of the lyrics of it, he essentially says, you know, I'm sorry if I'm reckless with your heart, but I'm really just trying to figure out how to be a human being first. Right, so it talks about it in a very matter of fact of like, we're all humans, we're doing the best we can to get through this, and I might screw up, and I might hurt your heart, and I might do this, but at the end of the day, that's not my intentions. I'm just trying to figure out how to live and be the right human being for everybody, right? Yeah. So when you made that comment, I'm like, he's got to hear the Human Cody Johnson song, but I know the country stuff's not his wheelhouse, so do me a favor, listen to that, and then text me, let me know what you think.
Real quick question, Chad. What made you think I was immediately not into country music?
You know, I'm going to go with the Buffalo. Is that Josh Allen on the back?
Okay, so that's actually my roommates.
There you go. And, you know, you're a kid in Chicago. I don't see a whole lot of Chicagoites rocking. You know, probably country music is it on the L? Is that right out there in Chicago?
Yeah. Yep. That's it. No, not too much. We still got Kanye out here that represents Chicago.
Crazy Kanye running all over the place, man.
Well, man, Chad, thank you so much for just a fucking fantastic conversation, and just being fucking,
for having me.
Yeah, just being open about everything, and You know, like we said at the beginning, it's important to simply just model this behavior of openness so others can see what it actually looks like. And two people, like, again, you and me have very, very different backgrounds. And we can still come together and like have this conversation, and there's, you know, fucking years apart and shit. And yet there's still so much we have in common. And back to, I guess, just the idea of being human is all of us are just human. And really at the end of the day, like, we want the same things, which is to be seen, be heard, and feel love.
Yeah, and that's it, man. And I think, you know, I always make the joke. I'm like, if there was a way to get a plane and just sprinkle mushrooms over a fucking city, I think you would see that city drastically change, you know, in years, if not months, you know. So it's, you know, I think it's going to take some stepping, but I think, you know, when you get guys like me and you and others that are in this ecosystem that are willing to talk about it, that can resonate and connect with other people, like, I think you'll exponentially start to see this community grow and grow and grow. Because once, like I said, once you're on the other side of the mountain and you've tried this shit, like, you want everybody to come play with you because it's a better place to be. I like this Chad McLean of 2 years better than the last 25 years Chad McLean. I'll take this guy all day. That other jerk off, like, I could pass on him.
Yeah. What actually immediately kind of comes to mind hearing you say that is like the idea of, obviously, like, once you've kind of seen that light and you're on the other side, like, you know, you realize that you can't go back. But like, eventually with these medicines, again, eventually, God, I have no idea how long this is going to take, but there's going to be a point there is going to be a point where, you know, enough people actually get that healing. And then once they are having kids of their own and creating these kids, the kids aren't going to have the same traumas. And like, I mean, hopefully there is a world in which there's no fucking need for any of this ever. Like, that's what the actual goal is. It's not that everybody needs to do this. It's that we get to a point where none of this healing is needed in the first place, because we're taught about this shit at a young age.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this: is every single morning I drop my boys off. One takes the bus, the other one I still drop off at preschool. Every single morning I hug them, I kiss them, and I just said, hey, be kind, be nice, and be safe, and have a great day. Every single morning I make sure I say that, so it's entrenched in them. Like, be a kind person, man. Just be nice. Just roll with it. And after all, be safe, because there's some crazy bullshit going on, as you and I know, out there. So yeah. It's changed me as a father to communicate differently with my boys, so they don't have that screaming, angry parent that they reflect on when they're 20. Now, I'm going to fuck my kids up somewhere along the way. They're going to have some kind of trauma, but hopefully that trauma is very short in their window of life, as opposed to, you know, like all of us are talking about today.
Yeah, fuck. I'm just going to keep talking, but hearing you say that is like also like the importance of, as a parent, not that I'm a parent, but, you know, when your kids hear you say, be kind and be nice, kids take that shit to heart. But then if they come home from a parent that says that to them, and then they see that parent being a dick or fucking yelling at them, that's confusing. That's inherently very confusing. And then they're going to see that message of basically like, well, you just told me to be kind, and then I saw you go yell at that fucking waiter over there, like over like our food not being hot enough or some shit. Yeah. They're immediately going to be like, well, that was bullshit. And then they're not going to trust you.
No. And I've had my moments. Trust me, I've definitely had my moments as a parent that I have blown up. And I'm not saying that backhanded my kids but I was like, God damn it, I lost it. And I went on a walk, and my wife knows it. When she has her time and she loses it, we just look at each other. I'm like, I got him. Go on a walk. So then you calm down, and then you come back. And for me, same thing. This was not a taught behavior. This was not a learned behavior. But I knew it was the right thing to do. Is, you know, when I blew up at one of my boys, I came home, I kneeled down, I got eye to eye to him, and I said, hey, buddy, Dad was in a weak point. I am sorry. I screwed up. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Like, I lost my temper. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to me. Like, I love you, man. He's like, no, Dad, it's all good. I love you. And he gave me a hug. Yeah. So
and that's the importance. Like,
would have done.
Yeah, that's the resolution, is like, obviously we're going to have our moments where like we blow up and like we're weak and we do shit completely against everything that I talk about right now. And it's after that happens, being able to recognize that, and then come to that resolution with whoever the hurt party is, like that's how we heal. That's truly, I think, where the healing is showing that humanness and then being able to, you know, admit that in a vulnerable state.
Agreed. Same thing with me and my wife. We don't really have arguments or kick and scream, but you know, I'm still one of those males that, you know, stuff, and you know, I distance myself, and and now, like, when I feel that coming on and I feel like something's bugging me, I call it vomiting. I immediately vomit. And I just tell my wife, hey, I'm not in a good headspace. Like, this really pissed me off about you. Or, like, hey, I didn't appreciate when you did this. Or if I know it's just going to roll off the tongue wrong, like, hey, babe, I got to say something to get it off my chest. I know it's not going to come out right, but just hear me for what I'm trying to say. And I say it. She like, okay, that's fair. I get where you're coming from, but and then she'll give me her side of the version and how she saw it and understood it. And then I'm like, I get where you're coming from as well. So, right, it all comes back to the old school. We just got to fucking communicate, right? And we have all these gadgets that are in our goddamn way from actually being connectivity of real humans. But, same point, if I didn't have social media, you didn't have your podcast, you and I probably would never ever have crossed paths, right? We're in two different planets, two different people, two different likes and needs and wants. We might have crossed each other getting a coffee downtown Chicago one day, but we're not having a conversation like this.
No.
You know, so I think there's the good points of our technology, and there's the down points. But
yeah,
we got to get back to connecting as human beings, having true conversations.
And that goes back to, I guess, you know, kind of the conversation we had about recreationally using plant medicine versus intentionally. It's like using things with intention. Social media is a great tool if used with intention, but they make it so fucking addictive that you just sit there scrolling and like consuming this fucking garbage that makes you end up feeling shitty about yourself, because that's what it's designed to do. Like, unfortunately, that's just the actual design of it. It's designed to be as addictive as possible. So before using it, realizing that, okay, like I'm using this to go out and connect with more people that are in this healing space. And once I feel I'm no longer doing that, fucking close it and throw my phone across the room.
That's it. Yeah, I'm learning to be good with that, right? I mean, we're doing all of our own social media. You know, so unfortunately, like I'm replying to messages, I'm doing comments, you know, my wife's doing a lot of the posting, and then I'll post, and, you know, so we're on it more than I want to be, but same thing, like short term, yeah, I need to be on it. Like, that's how we're going to get out there. Long term, not so much, you know, but I want to build in, you know, safe points, because I don't know if you've seen it, but with what I'm trying to do, I've literally reached out to everybody, you know, every Tom, Dick, and Harry I can, and I'm very persistent. And there's people that won't give me the time of day. And these are people that are in the veteran community that know, like, if you took 2 seconds, 5 minutes, fucking go look at my website. You know what I'm about. You know what I'm trying to do. You can see my designs. I've sent probably $5-6 grand worth of apparel to people.
Damn.
And I might have had a handful of people actually like wear it and support us. So for me, it's like, if we're all in this same damn bus together, like, we all need, you know, what's the terminology, as the sea rises, all boats float, or some shit like that, right? You know?
That sounds right.
You know, I'm just like, why are we? To me, it's like, it's so easy. I'm not asking for your money. I'm just asking you to use your network and post and say, go follow this guy so we can grow. I mean, break it down again. Lululemon is a $2.6 billion profitable company, and they're athleisure. That's it. If Mental Joe can even get a sliver of that, you know how many people we would change lives?
Well, here's where I guess, like, you're, you know, I guess kind of the problem is like wearing something like Lululemon that is sort of, again, brandless, doesn't really stand for something, immediately takes all responsibility of basically like somebody judging you, takes that off of you. The second I start wearing something that stands for something, that now means that basically like my ego is building this sort of identity that I now might have to defend from people. And so like people are, I think, inherently scared to wear things that stand for something, even if they agree with that, because they don't want to be judged for it.
Yeah. And it's why, like, our Mental Joe, like our what I call it kind of our graphics and hoodies and hat division, if you will. as we grow, like I said, we want to have an athleisure wear that'll have a different logo, and it'll speak to audiences, of all demographics, really. It won't have the crazy mushroom designs like this. We're still going to have our crazy mushrooms designs and,
good,
our psychedelic designs and all that jazz. That's going to be in our graphic tee area. That's still going to be Mental Joe. Like, I already have it. Like, I'm working on a bunch of stuff, but I've already got the logos for it, and I've already got the name for the other company, and that will be our blue collar Lululemon. But it will be to promote mental health awareness, and each one of those lines will be dedicating profits back to non-traditional modalities, medicines, you name it, and to bring awareness more into this ecosystem that we all want to kind of spread like wildfire.
Thank you again to Chad for coming on the podcast and having a freaking awesome discussion. If anybody is interested in checking out Mental Joe Apparel, go to www.mentaljoe.com. And if you want to follow them on Instagram, follow them at Mental Joe Apparel. I will also be linking to both of those in the footnotes of this podcast. Lastly, if you enjoyed the show, please rate this, like it, subscribe to it, and share it with a friend. And thank you again for listening.